Other questions for the delegation? Being none, thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much.
And our next delegation is Paul Chapman with the Nanaimo and Area Land Trust. And again, a gentle reminder that we're focusing on 15.2, which is the suggestion that we amend the regional growth strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Paul Chapman. I'm the Executive Director of the Nanaimo and Area Land Trust, also known as NALT. I'm here today to speak in support of increased recognition and protection of waterways and wetlands being included in the regional growth strategy. As it relates to climate change, mitigation is all about carbon, adaptation is all about water. As we know, the effects of climate change in our region include changes in distribution of precipitation over time. What does this mean? Longer periods of dry and drought interspersed with intense rainstorms and flood. Combined with a trend towards reduced snow accumulation at higher levels, this will seriously affect the water supply for natural and human use and will challenge our built infrastructure in myriad ways. Water resiliency for human and natural use depends on a return to natural water balance. In the Nanaimo region, in a natural state, water that falls on the land on average, 40% is taken up via evapotranspiration by plants, 50% percolates into the ground as interflow or groundwater, and 10% runs across the surface of the land. Evapotranspiration and percolation are processes that slow rainwater down and store water for use during times of dry. In our built environments, we dramatically alter this relationship. In our urban areas, we redirect water, rush it from roofs and roads into pipes, and flush it into our streams. Instead of mimicking natural systems to store water for use during times of scarcity, we remove it as quickly as possible. Where we do this, we mimic flash floods. Our waterways and wetlands are important ecological assets. We rely on the services they provide to convey and absorb water. Healthy waterways and wetlands provide these services better than compromised systems. To ensure ecological integrity of a watershed, there's an argument about protecting 30 to 70% of it as a minimum. This is quite a wide range, and where you land on this range reflects the physical attributes of the watershed and your interest in the watershed. If you're looking at protecting less than 70% of a watershed, your most effective protections will be applied to riparian areas. That's the land adjacent to water, whether it's flowing or standing water. The highest value land for water health is the riparian area. Riparian setback width should be at least 3 times the length of the tallest trees that would be expected to grow in that area. And that's 3 times the length from both edges, the water edge and the affected landscape. This protects against edge effects. These kinds of conditions are becoming increasingly rare in our watersheds. We are operating in a riparian deficit. Freshwater protection supports these values, environmental values. Maintaining riparian areas in a natural state supports natural water balance to provide surface water and groundwater for natural and human needs. Effective protections of riparian areas provide critical corridors for ecological integrity. Economic values. We rely on our watersheds to furnish eco-assets that support critical services to our communities. The cost of maintaining the natural values that support watershed health is much lower than trying to repair damage to our waterways and water bodies or engineer the services they provide. Effective protections also support water supply for agriculture, allow for aggregate operations without compromising water quality, and strengthens the social contract that supports forestry in our communities. Social values. Much of our recreation is connected to freshwater. Swimming, fishing, hiking, biking, bird watching are just a few of the activities pursued in healthy watersheds and wetlands. But on a more elemental level, these waterways are crucial connections that provide a home to iconic species and create the conditions that grow the big trees and abundant forests that we think of as our home landscape, our home place. It's not by accident that we settle by rivers. With regards to extending the urban containment boundary, the negative effects of human activity compound as we flow through urban areas. The flash flood inputs of impermeable surfaces and storm drains increase. The intact riparian areas narrow or disappear. This is also where upstream issues are realized as siltation and flooding. This is where our built infrastructure is compromised along with our critical natural assets. Extending the urban containment boundary protects our waterways and wetlands and works to benefit all of us. Nothing in a watershed is independent of anything else in the watershed. This extends from human and natural uses, to the decisions you make today. All the elements that I've spoken of fit with the goals of the regional growth strategy. We plan for the water we want in quality and abundance. The regional growth strategy should be a foundational part of that plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chapman. Any questions for this delegation? Director Wallace?
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chapman, for coming. You made a statement that riparian area should be 3 times the length of the tallest tree in the area, and can you just maybe qualify where that information comes from, please?
Yeah, so that's about edge effects, right? So generally, if you're protecting the forest, so that includes the understory as well as the canopy, you take the average length of the tallest tree. If it's 30 meters, say, you want to go 3 times that length, so 90 meters. But that's 90 meters on either side to protect just the center of that. So it's the minimum amount. So that would be 90 meters from the riverbank to the center where that tallest tree exists or should exist, and 90 meters out to the affected landscape, whether that's, you know, housing or farming or whatever that other land use is. It should be that at a minimum.
Go ahead. Thank you. So the current standard, and in electoral areas, the authority is the 30-meter riparian setback. And so do you know how that was based, where that's from, or why that would be considered adequate versus what the 90-meter recommendation is? I mean, you work in water every day. I know that. So I'm just trying to understand the difference between 30 and 90, and what is that science? Where did it come from, and is it relevant? I don't know how we're using that every day when your recommendation is so much larger. Thank you.
I think that's about protecting the bank and top of bank, and that's why they've come up with 30 meters. And then, you know, that we have 30-meter rivers and 15-meter creeks and 5-meter creeks, and I think that's really a political decision.
Thank you. And Director Manley.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, thank you, Mr. Chapman, for your presentation. I'm wondering if you could just talk a little bit about the state of the Nanaimo River watershed. It's the largest watershed in the region, one of the largest on the island, and the largest estuary, and how this change in the growth strategy might affect the Nanaimo River watershed.
Yeah, and so the Nanaimo River watershed is something like 86% of it is held in private forestry lands, and then, you know, most of the remaining 14% in private lands. Is very little protected public lands on the Nanaimo River. So this sort of strategy would provide those extra protections around the riparian area of that river, that corridor that isn't protected to that extent. Whether that's beyond the city boundaries into the regional district or within the city. We're looking at a 30-meter setback there. And then in private managed forestry lands, they don't really have a riparian setback so much as they have a requirement to leave X number of stems along the riparian area. So you can actually cut right up to the river bank as long as you've left X number of stems along the way. So there's no riparian setback protection. So you know, the effect, and when an area is cleared, whether that's for residential, whether that's for farming, whether that's for forestry, increases that surface flow, that runoff into the river, and with a compromised riparian area, it compromises the water quality in the river, and also compromises water that's available to support that river during times of dry and drought. There's very little protected land and very, very little public protected land on the Nanaimo River.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman, for coming today.